Good evening and welcome to the first show of Talk Business for 2021. Now, the year 2020 has been challenging for a lot of organizations, businesses, and financial institutions. And people have taken to social media to vet their frustrations, their questions, and their fears. And with us tonight to set the record straight and to talk business about your fund is the CEO of the Fiji National Provident Fund, Mr. George Koroi, and Mr. Pravnesh Singh from the FMPF. Good evening to you both, sir, and Happy New Year.
Bulwanaka, Christina, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to reach out to our members in this platform.
Thank you, sir. Now, my first question for you, Mr. CEO, is what were the fund's key achievements at the end of the 2020 financial year?
Thank you, Christina. During the year ended June 2020, of course, that's only about a few months of COVID. FMPF, like any other institutions, has been affected by COVID. As required under legislation, we have submitted the audited accounts to Parliament, and we have also taken the results to our members in December through the member forums. But I think the key highlights for the year was, the total assets of members have grown by about 400 million to 7.9 billion. The profit for the year was 320 million, although it's come down over the year. But we've also declared an interest of 293 million in the last financial year. The details have been shared extensively with our members. I think I also want to add on here in terms of the status of FNPF. In the last weekend, we gave a chart about FNPF through the print media, which compares FNPF against other funds in the Pacific. Yeah. I think the main take from that is FNPF is the biggest out of all the funds in the Pacific, and it's also the more diversified in terms of investments. I think those are the key messages, and we want to assure the members, because we need to compare ourselves with others, and compared to others, this is where we stand, and I think that should be reassuring to members.
Thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Now, Mr. Singh, how did the COVID-19 pandemic impact the fund's achievements?
Thank you, Christiana. COVID-19 was a very sudden one. We didn't expect, so we had to quickly adjust and ensure enough resources, cash resources were there to be able to pay out these assistances. The fund had carefully considered the COVID relief, and given that we had to quickly understand which members were affected, especially in the Western Division along the Coral Coast Belt where there are a number of hotels. So we had to understand how many of them had actually lost their jobs, how many of them had were affected through the social distancing policies, how many of them were under lockdowns, and we also extended the assistance to taxi drivers and small and micro-term entrepreneurs. Obviously, when it comes to assistance, these are cash assistance that FNPF pays. So we had to ensure there were available cash available to be able to pay these members. So obviously, if we have if we pay direct cash assistance, this limits our ability to be able to invest this cash and earn higher returns, because obviously our withdrawals have exceeded the normal budgeted amounts. So it does have an impact on our cash balances as well as our profit for the year.
Now, Mr. Singh, prior to the rollout of the COVID-19 withdrawals for members, FNPF said there was enough cash. Does the fund have enough cash to continue to cover these withdrawals?
Yes, it does. FNPF does not get into any assistance without careful planning and setting aside sufficient reserves. So we monitor our positions using a number of risk appetite measures, such as liquidity buffers set out in our treasury policy. And these buffers are meant to safeguard against mass withdrawals like what we had during TC Winston and during Harold, Josie, Kenny and the recent Yasa, to ensure during such unforeseen circumstances we have got sufficient cash to be able to pay out as and when required. Because as you know, apart from cash, FMPF has got a portfolio of assets that cannot be easily converted. So we've got in such natural disaster situations, the assistance is rolled out in cash mostly. So we've got to ensure these are available as and when needed. Should there be additional stress, like in recent times there has been a lot of talks about FNPF may run out of cash or will not be able to meet future withdrawals. Let me assure you that FNPF has in the past not stopped any withdrawals, stopped anyone from withdrawing their retirement fund, even if it meant they came for a lump sum payment, and it has not rationed any capital. So these are the assurances we provide to our members. It's very important to come, if our members have got any doubts, they need to come and talk to us. And again, given that the uncertainty continues and we don't know when this is going to end, and at this point in time we've extended phase 2 round 4 and phase 3 round 3, and this will take us all the way to March. So we need to have enough cash to be able to roll out the cyclical payments. And if there are situations when if it does arise, then we've got additional levers that we can pull the cash from. We've got cash in our offshore accounts, as well as we've got a tradable facility with the Reserve Bank of Fiji. So these are the additional levers that FNPF has in case if it does get into a situation and we need to call it a crisis. But at the moment we've got sufficient cash to meet our withdrawals.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sina. Before we wrap up this segment, Mr. CEO, is there enough cash to sustain FNPF investments?
Thank you. I think before I go into that question, let me add a bit on the previous answer by Pravines. I think it's important for the members to know that we administer their funds through the FNPF Act and regulations. Whatever we are doing in terms of allowing members to withdraw through the unemployment is allowed for under the policy, under the act of the fund, FNPF Act. Where members can access up to 30% through their general account. So all these payments are coming out of their general account. In terms of investments, I think it's important for us to understand also that we manage the assets and liabilities of members. That's basically what we're doing. All the money that we collect from members are contributions. We need to invest those funds. But under this, and we are long-term investors. That's very important. We will not be closing in the next 2 years. We want to make sure that when you retire, maybe when you reach 55, 30 years from now, or whatever, there is FNPF to meet the obligations. So we're looking through this, in terms of our planning cycle, we look at long-term.
Through those lenses.
Yeah, through those lenses. Okay, this year's, next year, we are going through this problem. So we project our case and our assets and liabilities according to that. Right now there's maybe an increase in members coming for the liabilities, so we need to match the assets accordingly. Cash is only another form of asset. There are other assets that we can convert to cash to meet the members' liability. We can. There are two things two limitations that we have. One, we can't go and borrow money. That is another protection for our members, to make sure that whatever the assets are only there to meet the members' liabilities. Fiji TV, if you need, you can go and borrow money from the bank. We can't. So, and secondly, the assets that we have, we can't convert them quickly to cash like other countries. So we need to manage the liquidity in those two parameters. So we project long term, and we manage under this environment.
Thank you for that, sir. Now stay with us. We've got more coming up after the break. Don't go away.